Good morning, guys. Welcome to another recorded video lesson. Alright, Mr. Cavazos here. We are doing AT-US history. Today we're starting out with the objective bar, the one you see on Teams in the class for the Zoom call. Here it is. We're going to go through our objective a little later, so I want to start you out with the big brain question of the day. Comparing and contrasting the developments and lifestyle of Spanish, French, and English colonies in North America. So basically the different lifestyles and way that those colonial groups and nations lived. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Quick do now at the start. Again, I won't give you time in the video to do this. I'll usually just pause it for a few seconds so you can hit pause and get moving. So we're setting up your notes page and get your key terms ready, which means to copy them down, obviously. And again, you can always add to that list if you want. That list is my list that I think you should have, that I'm assuming you don't know. So, make sure you get the key terms. Make sure you are signed up for Google Classroom. If you're watching this video on YouTube right now, you probably have the Google Classroom, but I'm still waiting on 2 of you. Those 2 that haven't signed up yet, you are missing assignments. So make sure you get it done. And now, using as much detail as you can, describe Native American culture before European contact. That's for the chat box. You guys are not watching live anymore or at all, obviously. So instead of putting it in the chat box, I want you to just think of it. And I want you to kind of put it somewhere on the top of your notes. Like, before Europeans arrived, natives lived like this. Just go ahead and do that. As we move forward, I will pause it for a few seconds, and then you hit pause to get the do now ready. Okay, so one more thing, exit ticket expectations. You must submit your exit tickets on time. Some of you were a little bit late yesterday. I understand. I was late yesterday. We had like 3 minutes in class left when I showed it to you, and I was like, all right, guys, go do your exit ticket. But moving forward, we're going to make sure that you have time in class at the end to complete the exit ticket, submit it, and then leave the Zoom, and then, you're done with your day. And to make sure you have time today, I'm going to make sure moving forward. Each day, the exit tickets were 20 points. And at the end of the week, you get the full grade, the full 100, or minus however many you have, for either, not completing the exit ticket correctly or for just not doing it at all. If you miss a day, you will never get that 100. So keep that in mind. If you participate and attempt, you are likely to get close to 100, if not, depending on how well you do 100. But you will do well if you participate and attempt the exit tickets. Don't just leave them blank. Don't leave them to the end. Don't not do them. We had like 10 people not do them yesterday, and those are just zeros in your things. That's the highest grade you can get this week is an 80. Don't step away from the computer before you've done it. That's the best practice. I'll make sure there's time in class so there's no excuses. So make sure you get that done. If you were one of those few people who got a 0 in yesterday's exit ticket, after you submit today's, send it to me on Teams. Send me yesterday's on Teams in a message, and I will fix it this one time, because now you all are hearing this. Everybody heard it. My homeroom heard it in the morning. You guys are hearing it now. So if you didn't do that, do it today. Do today's on time, and then send me yesterday's, and I will correct it. This is the one time that I will do that. That being said, let's move on into the lesson for today, which is the Age of Exploration. We're finally getting into Europe showing up. Age of Exploration. Europeans are getting there. Europeans are arriving. We're going to talk about their reasons for going. We're going to talk about why they wanted to go. And we are going to talk about how they lived once they arrived. So get ready for the Age of Exploration. Alright, so the objective. We are going to explain the causes of exploration and conquest of the New World by various European nations. So we're going to talk about what caused all of these exploration, what caused all these conquests, and, the different nations that did them. So let's go ahead and move on with that. I'll leave this up for 3 seconds. Again, you should be pausing if you need time to write these in if you are out of class. Let's go ahead and move forward. So, before the Age of Exploration came in, what was Europe like? Well, Europe had recently gone through a technological surge, if you'd say, during an era known as the Renaissance. So you have all sorts of new technological innovations, like in ships, shipbuilding, in weapons like cannon, all fueling the ability for these European nations to actually get out of Europe and go explore other things. nation states are growing in power. The ones specifically in regards to colonization are England, France, Spain, Portugal, and Holland. Yes, Portugal and Holland. Those are big ones. In fact, in Brazil, they still speak Portuguese because the Portuguese were the ones that landed in Brazil. The Protestant Reformation and all sorts of religious wars. If you know anything about England, you know England's a mess of religious wars during this time. The War of the Roses, all sorts of nonsense. You've got, I believe, Mary burning people for being Catholic. It's rough. Predestination, the Anglican Church, the Church of England, is running rampant. If you're not a member of the Church of England, you are not welcome in England. Counter-Reformation, basically, the Catholics are so taken aback by this Reformation and all these new religions popping up that they are trying their hardest to assert their dominance and be you're supposed to be Catholic, none of this Protestant Christian nonsense. So it's not easy living in Europe during this time. It's kind of hectic, and on top of that, new technology and new explorers opening up doorways to places people hadn't heard about. You start to see a shift, a change in people's motivations, and we'll get into what some of those were on the very next slide. So, types of European colonization. Basically what I mean by that are the countries, right? The main ones. Especially in North America, you'll have Spain, Christopher Columbus, right? You'll have France, Jacques Cartier, again, bad with the pronunciations. Henry Hudson with the Dutch, who found New York and places like that. New York's a colony that'll get kind of borrowed by England later on. And then in England, you have charter colonies, which are permission from the king, proprietary colonies, which sprout out, while they're there, and royal colonies that are, again, sent from the king. So charter is different from royal in the sense that royal is the king says, hey, go make a colony there, and the king sends them. Charter is a permission for, say, a company, like the Virginia Company, to go and start a colony. So they both have permission from the king, but one's directly that's the king's colony, and the other's more that's the company's colony. So just keep that in mind on the different types. All right, I'll leave this up for a little bit. You don't really need this. This is background. I would add a little bit of this in on your other notes. Which brings us to key point 1. Key point 1 is up right now. European nations' efforts to explore and conquer the New World stem from a search of new sources of wealth. Right? Money, new sources of wealth. Economic and military competition. When one country hears about the other one's exploits, they want to get in on the game too. They want to make sure that other country is not taking advantage of everybody. And a desire to spread Christianity. This isn't true of all nations colonizing, but it is true of some, especially Spain. So, if you couldn't tell, if you didn't notice, we are talking about something that we've all talked about before. European nations getting what? They're after sources of wealth, which is an economic, which is gold. Economic, gold, money. Economic and military competition. Competition, P, political, glory. Spreading Christianity, social, religious, God. God, gold, glory. 3 G's. Back in middle school for a second, right? Talking about the 3 G's. Let's move forward. So, God, which is a type, I'm going to type it in right now. And type it in, get it? Which is a social cause. Right? God, which is a social cause, spread the faith of Christianity. All right, this gained favor with God, the Vatican, Spain specifically, and some other little countries want to make sure that the Catholic Church is all powerful and has all these people spreading. So they send missionaries, people who walk around the world peacefully in hopes of preaching, converting, especially natives. The groups they're trying to convert are natives. Conversion, changing natives' culture and beliefs, those are Christianity. If you remember yesterday, we talked about how natives sort of had shaman-type practices. They worship the animals and the land and things like that. Well, Europeans are there to try to change that, make them be more Christian in nature. So that's where that comes in. That's God. I'm going to leave that up for a few seconds before I move on. Again, pause this so you can take your notes. You don't need every single word, but you need every, big bullet point. You need the big ones. And then if you want to elaborate as much as you feel you need. Okay. Glory. Glory is a political cause. Political cause. We're going to type that in. The cause is mixed up, but political, right? So, nation states become stronger the more they grow. One way you grow is by getting colonies. Colonies add to the land. They add to the potential for people. It adds the room to grow. You can't grow if there's no room. Right? If your shoe's a size 9 and your foot grows 3 sizes, you're going to rip through that shoe. It's the way it works with land and nations, too. As nations get stronger, they need more land in order to keep getting stronger. It's like a growing boy. They need to keep eating. It's like a growing kid. Mercantilism. Raw material from the New World benefits the mother countries. Some countries that don't have these raw materials get a new influx of them, whether it's gold, iron, all sorts of things from the Columbian Exchange we'll talk about tomorrow. Raw materials coming into the mother countries benefits the mother countries through a system that will be known as mercantilism. Personal recognition. Individuals gain favor, like renown, they get important by completing acts of exploration and like daring heroism. And of course, personal wealth. These are all political motivations because it's making people and nations stronger, particularly nations. Although if you're an explorer, that's the big deal. It's like being a major general in the later years. You're the bee's knees if you're an explorer, and you're actually a successful explorer, not just somebody that says they're an explorer. All right, so a couple of seconds on there before we move forward. And lastly, we got gold. If you didn't know, gold is economic. It's an economic cause for these moves. Mercantilism, favorable balance of trade, the mother country, her colonies, tariffs. What does that mean? So, under mercantilism, if you don't remember mercantilism from 8th grade, which I don't know how you would, because I wasn't your teacher and I'm the best. Just kidding. But not really. Mercantilism was a system that benefited the mother country at the expense of the colonies, essentially making the colonies do all the work for almost none of the reward. So the mother country is making money that way. That's what favorable balance of trade means. The mother country, again, and the colonies. Colonies work for the mother country. That's the dynamic. Tariffs, when the colonies need stuff. Hey, we need shovels to keep digging stuff for you. Tax the ever-loving heck out of it and send it back. So you got the colonists paying more for something that they shouldn't be paying more for. And then literally finding gold and silver was another way to make money and gain finance. They could also finance wars and more exploration the more gold and silver they found. Okay, so I'm going to leave that up for a pause, and then we're going to move forward. Which brings us to key point 2. Key point 2, European nations had different approaches to colonization, and the effects can still be felt in the regions they colonized. We're not going to get too deathly specific on this, but just note whether it's the way that the place is built, the architecture, whether it's the type of people who live there or how many people live there. All of these little things, especially as we get later on into the class and we talk about like the Louisiana Territory and stuff, is affected by the nation who initially colonized it. So, first let's talk about Spain. Spain sent conquistadors to set out and find riches and fame exploring and conquering lands from the southwestern United States, which is like all the way up here, all the way down into South America. Now, something about the Spanish conquistadors, they're like a mix between explorer and soldier, right? They're there ready to fight. They're good at fighting. They conquered the Aztecs, conquistador, conqueror. In addition to gold and glory, what the Spanish really, really did, and they tried to do this a lot, you see it with missions right all over this area in San Antonio, the Alamo, places further up. Spanish missions were there to convert natives to Catholicism, right? Spanish missions are a straight up tie back to initial Spanish colonization. If you don't get initial Spanish colonization, you don't have those missions there. AP graders love when you can get local with your U.S. history. When you're talking about Spanish colonization, don't be afraid to mention, hey, there's missions everywhere. I probably went to go see them when I was in middle school, something to that effect. Gotta keep that in mind. They're really, 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 really helpful. Moving forward, let's talk about the French. France. So the French will colonize modern-day Canada and the central United States, the Louisiana Territory. But unlike the other nations, especially England, but for the most, also for a little bit of Spain, they were not interested in living there. They were interested in economic gain. They wanted that gold as more than anything. So they were mostly interested in fur trapping and trading. So they cooperated with the natives in the areas they were in a lot of the time. There was very small numbers of French people there, and they were mainly there to live among the natives, trap animals, and bring the furs back. That's it. That's pretty much all the French were there for. And you can see them on the map kind of right here, this green area. And now let's talk a little bit about England. We're not going to spend too much time talking about England because we're going to spend most of this course talking about England, especially period 2 when we get into the year 1607. Just know that England settled all sorts of different colonies, some with royal permissions and charters like Virginia, and others without permission like Pilgrims at Plymouth, who were seeking religious freedom. This meant that different English colonies were established for different reasons. They're probably the most disjointed in the sense that, Maryland for the Catholics and Pennsylvania for the Quakers, and each colony kind of has their own little spin to it. But we'll get more into that a little later when we talk about the 13. Just keep that in mind. England is all over the place. They're up here in very, very northern Canada and right here in what would be the 13 colonies right along the Atlantic coast. Alright guys, that is it for the lesson. I'm going to freeze frame it on the exit ticket so you guys have that as a reference. Make sure that you take the time to answer these in SAQ format, right? That means A, and then the answer for the first one, B, and then the answer for the second one, C, and D, and then the answers. Write in full and complete sentences. Please do not give me short responses. Short responses are hard to give points to. It's much easier to give points to full sentence writing. Do not forget details. Details matter, and especially in U.S. history, details matter. Because we only talk about a couple hundred years, we don't get the luxury of getting to have a lot of big picture ideas. The more big picture you are, the harder it is if you don't narrow it down as we go through. So the questions are: identify reasons for European exploration of the New World. Give specific examples of economic reasons. Give specific examples for social reasons. And give specific examples for political reasons. By the way, your answer for A is not just economic, social, political. Get more specific. What am I talking about? What's the other phrase for those? So, I'll leave this freeze frame for a couple of seconds, guys, as the video is ending. Thank you. If you have any questions, message me on Teams or send me an email. Have a great rest of your day, guys. I'll see you in class later.